Sorry, we were running a few minutes behind, and we're waiting for one other member to join. But being that we are running a few minutes behind, I was hoping to call this meeting to order. And if we could stand and say the pledge, that would be wonderful. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I was gonna say, what, just. Okay, so I'll say Sophie is seconding that. So all in favor? Okay, 7-0. Wonderful. And with that, we will move on to the public hearing with our first speakers of the night, our Greenwich High School representatives, who I see out there in the audience. Come on forward, Rocky Zhao and Mihir Shah. While these lovely gentlemen walk to the front of the auditorium to come speak, I'll just let everybody know that Rocky is our student body president from the Greenwich High School, and Mihir is our student body vice president, and they'll be addressing us this evening.
Ready? Hello, Chair Hurst, Dr. Jones, and members of the board. My name is Mihir Shah, and I'm the student body vice president at Greenwich High School. It's been 3 weeks since Greenwich High School opened its doors to the incoming class of 2028, ushering a new generation of GHS students eager to learn and make a difference. On the same day, the seniors celebrated the beginning of their last school year in Greenwich Public Schools. In these 3 weeks, I am proud to say that student government has made great progress in ensuring that this is a great year for every single person at GHS. Our overarching goals for the year are as follows. First, we want to maintain at least 70% attendance for all mass meetings. We also want to finalize at least 2 policy proposals to submit to the administration and then the board by the end of the year. Finally, our most important goal is centered around school spirit. Specifically, we want each class to engage at least 1/4 or 200 students of their grade in a class or school-sponsored event. These goals were all established with school spirit in mind. We want to improve the climate of the school to what it was before the pandemic. For every freshman to become engaged in a warm school community, and for every senior to feel as if they are celebrated for the past 4 years. This spirit will be on full display in the coming week as we kick off homecoming. There's been great excitement surrounding homecoming this year, with every student eager to participate in our dance this Saturday and our theme days this Monday, which is America Day, Tuesday, which is Dress Like a Teacher Day, Wednesday, which is Senior Dress Up Day, and Friday, which is Cardinal Spirit Day, culminating with the football game next Saturday. As for student government, we introduce a more selective process for representatives to maximize our output and participation. As the most important engine for change at GHS, student government will combine many voices in order to present at least 2 new policies to the administration. A lot of great things are happening at Greenwich High School. There's a renewed joy that has uplifted the community with pride and engagement. At the center of it all, we hope to have a school year packed with school spirit and fun. Our goals for the student government and the school as a whole are already being put into effect as we work hard to unite our classmates for good. Thank you for your time. Now, I am proud to introduce our student body president, Rocky.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Jones, and community members. My name is Rocky from the class of 2025, and I'm honored to serve as the GHS student body president this year. I'm incredibly excited to be working alongside all of you as we aim to make Greenwich High School the best environment possible for our students and staff. This year, while Mihir introduced our overarching student government goals, one of my key goals is to strengthen the connection between the student body and our student government leadership. I believe that the best ideas come from everyday conversations, whether they're happening in the lunchroom, the bus stop, or during a quick chat between classes. I want to make sure that I'm not just representing my peers in name, but also truly listening to what they have to say. As we engage with class reps and classmates, our focus will be on keeping our ears open for any suggestions, thoughts, or points of improvement that we can act upon. Whether it's about making academic life less stressful or adding more extracurricular opportunities, no idea is too small if it has the potential to enhance our school experience. I want students to feel that their voices matter and that we're all working together to create a community where everyone feels heard, respected, and supported. It's not just about passing through the halls, it's about building something meaningful where every student can thrive. I'm confident that with open communication and collaboration, we can make a real difference this year. This morning, we had our very first student government mass meeting where Mahir and I introduced our new subcommittees: Advisor Base, Community Service, Food Services, School Spirit, Environment and Student Center, and Communications and Student Concerns. We have combined 4 of our previous subcommittees into 2, being Environment and Student Center and Communications and Student Concerns, so that our class reps aren't spread too thin and each committee can have enough manpower to propel their ideas into action. We know that the subcommittees will develop some great policy proposals this year. In October, we're excited to welcome our 9th grade class officers after the freshman election, adding some new voices to our student government. With this upcoming year, I hope to work across grade level, creating a school environment inclusive for all. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to an exciting and productive year ahead. Let's make it one to remember.
Thank you. I know I look forward to always hearing from our students, and your voices truly do matter. I apologize for missing your first XCOM meeting, but I promise to be there going forward. So next on our list of public hearing, we are looking forward to hearing from President of, from GEA. Come on down, Lil.
Oh, I thought we rotated.
I mean, we can swap it around if you prefer. John's ready. He's got his puppets and everything, I hope.
I don't have my puppet yet, but I'm not gonna even say. Good evening, Dr. Jones, Board of Ed members, GEA and our Greenwich community. I love new beginnings. Meeting the new teachers filled with excitement, students excited about being back, parents more excited about the kids being back in school and out of the house. I'm thankful for all that we have accomplished last year. Hopeful that what was not accomplished last year will be accomplished this year or show significant growth towards that end. We still have things that we need to address as we hear in other districts, and hopefully it never happens here, of bomb threats and stress and anxiety and shooting threats. But they're there, they're in our thoughts of our students and our teachers. I am concerned, and we'll be watching closely the PG report, and be watching closely and may talk about a few of the things. I'm concerned about system structures, learning environment, and our human capital. Human capital, is that our teachers? Human capital? Okay, all right, your human capital. So, capital investment. Some things have not changed, and I talked about it last year, and we know better and we need to do better. This is a supply and demand. There is a teacher shortage, there's a parent shortage, and there's a sub shortage. Although we say that we're fully staffed, teachers are still pulled to cover, and it's already happening. We need to make sure that our teachers have time to fill and give the service to all our students and the specialized services. We need to talk about resources. We can't, as my mom used to say, rob Peter to pay Paul. We need to come up, and when I say we, I don't have the power to do it, and I'm really not sure the Board of Ed. It really has to come from the people in the community, their priorities. We need to pay paras more. It's supply and demand. It's never held Greenwich back before. We were proud that we attracted the most highly qualified teachers. That's harder now because there's lots of competition out there and they're all paying more. Build it and they will come. So I ask the community and the people that hold the financial capital, not the human capital, to really think about ways that we can work together, because it's hurting. It's hurting the teachers. You know, we feel We feel pain, we feel sorrow, we feel joy, we feel stress. We have family members that are ill. So we need to have the time in our classroom and not being pulled to cover. So GEA will be watching. I'm very concerned about my special education teachers. They are concerned about having the time to provide their services. I know everyone's been working hard to make sure that happens. We'll wait and see. It's only the first couple weeks. We'll see how we work out, and we'll take it from there. And let's have a great year. Thank you.
Thanks, Lil. Next up, PTA Council, President of PTA Council, John Fisher. What, no puppets? Oh, I'm
You
just
know,
kidding.
we're dangerously close to an election, and I didn't want to make references to pachyderms or mules. So Chair Pro Tem Hirsch, BOE members, Superintendent Jones, everyone here who's sitting in the back is like in the bad kids section of the auditorium. And everyone listening, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm John Fisher, the Greenwich PTA Council President, parent of 2 of the 8,535 great kids in the Greenwich Public Schools. PTA Council is the umbrella organization made up by and for the 15 independent PTAs in town. I'm going to take a moment to remind everyone that now is the time to join your local PTA. Last year, we had just under 4,000 families join the PTAs in Greenwich. Our PTAs spent well over $1.25 million on enhancing the learning experiences of our students, supporting our teachers, building school community connections for our families, and adding our own small improvements to the school facilities. In addition to that $1.25 million, the 8th grade Washington, D.C. field trip fundraising committee, a cooperation with PTAC and the Alliance, provided funding to make it possible for all of our 8th graders to have that capstone Washington experience. Your PTA needs your help and support to continue the great work that we do in partnership with the schools. We welcome everyone back to school, especially you student leaders. And to another year of always informative and occasionally entertaining BOE meetings. It's been a good start to the year. Schools have already held open houses. Parents are having their own back to school moments as they hear from teachers and administrators about schedules and curriculum for the year. A number of families have expressed, and it's hard to say what the right word here is, let's say they've expressed frustration or concern with the reduction in instruction time for foreign languages. We all remember the impassioned speakers who came to the BOE meetings during last year's budget cycle to defend early year foreign language instruction. That seemed settled. And then suddenly last summer, reminds me of a song, it turns out that it wasn't. The rationale for the changes may be understandable. The surprise was not so understandable. We're also hearing repeatedly from parents that there are large class sizes in elementary classes and in middle and high school class sections. Dr. Jones has shared that the average class size across all schools, all grades is 19, which is great, and that the largest elementary class size is 25. But what we're hearing anecdotally is that those elementary classes are very crowded, especially for the older grades, the 5th graders, 4th and 5th graders, where the kids are bigger and they have more energy. We're hearing that some classes in the middle schools and at GHS are well over 25, and anecdotally, some have 30 or more. What we're hearing is anecdotal. We'd like to see the data on each of the classes. Class size matters to students, to teachers, to parents, and to learning outcomes. We didn't hear so many parents speak out last year about surprisingly large class sizes, but this surprise is regrettably understandable. It correlates to reducing 11 FTEs in the budget. It correlates to Greenwich having elementary class size guidelines of up to 26 students, while virtually all the comparable districts around us, the Durg A's and the Durg B's, have a maximum of 24. As we gear up for this year's budget cycle, it'll be understandable that the community won't be very understanding of more teacher reductions. We're excited and optimistic for the start of the new school year. We look forward to working with all of you and everyone in the community on to continue to strive to make the Greenwich schools the very best. Thank you for this time to speak. Thank you all for your public service. And to everyone, don't forget to join your PTA. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments, John. Next up, we will be having our community comments. And just as it's our first meeting of the year, I wanted to set a reminder in accordance with Board Policy 9325, which is our guidelines for our community comments. The board has allotted 1 hour for our public hearing prior to the board conducting its business. If things should go over 1 hour, we will have more comments afterwards, although tonight I don't expect that to happen. And as a reminder, each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to address the board. And we ask that you are respectful in your comments as you address the board in a civil manner. If people offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but we encourage members of the public to address complaints concerning individual district personnel, et cetera, through the proper chain of command. Pretty much with that, I will turn it over to our fantastic secretary to call our first speaker.
Hadrian Nobe, you're up first, followed by Julie Ferns. Ferns.
Hi, my name is Hadrian Nobe, and I'm a junior at GHS. Earlier this year, I spoke against the removal of flex time from the schedule, but in the end, my efforts were in vain. Flex time was removed on a 6-1 vote this May. Ironically, CMS has introduced a callback period, an extra 30 minutes at the end of the day to meet with teachers on rotation. It sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? But I'm not here today to talk about the middle school. I'm here to talk about the high school. I'm here to give you a status report, to tell you from a student's perspective what I see. I see people who need extra help from their teachers unable to get it since they don't have a ride to drive them to school early and because they have other commitments after the school day ends. I see teachers needing to schedule appointments instead of allowing walk-ins, and even then having no guarantee that their opens will overlap with that of their students. I see returning students forced to choose between 2 clubs that they love because instead of 8 distinct time blocks to choose from, now clubs must pick between 3 weekdays when the late bus runs and when advisors are paid for supporting extracurriculars. I see any student who wants to have more than 3 hobbies or whose hobbies happen to overlap out of luck. I see new students unable to find their place in the school since staying after at the end of the day instead of just checking out an activity and being able to leave on the normal bus is an impossibility for some and a big commitment for all. I see athletes forced to miss the entire last class of the day when they would have previously only missed a half-hour flex block. I see students who want to get a job unable to get one since leaving at the same time as the buses means an extra 15 minutes or more of waiting in traffic. I see students with accommodations unable to use them because there's no time allotted for their extra time. I see my bus arriving as late as 3:40 on Sundays, in no small part due to the increased traffic from flex time, when it's meant to arrive at 3:10. I see dissatisfaction with the BOE kind of rising in the student body, not even to mention the upcoming phone policy. I see hundreds of clubs left floundering without a time slot or an advisor willing to run them. Is all that lost school community, all those extra cars on the road, all those students who can't meet those with teachers, really worth an extra 2 minutes of class time? Is it really worth leaving, in a best case scenario, 5 minutes earlier? Without a community, GHS fails to prepare students for life. In other words, it fails to fulfill its duty as a school. Even if the previous flex time schedule is unsustainable, introducing some kind of community time where every student is able to meet their needs individually or with others
30
must be
seconds.
something the BOE implements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Julie, help me out. Perenniers, you're up next.
Perfect.
Good evening, Pro Tem Hirsch, Dr. Jones, members of the Board of Education, PTAs, and community. My name is Julie Feriniars, and this is my 15th year as the Executive Director of the Greenwich Alliance for Education. The Alliance is our town's education foundation, and 100% of our work is for Greenwich Public School students, teachers, and alumni. Congratulations to everyone here on the successful beginning of the new school year. Tonight you have our written report, and I am here to share a few highlights. Some quick stats. We have reached 5.1 million in program funding, with the largest buckets, 2 million in Reaching Out grants for 67 grants that have reached all schools, nearly 1 million for tuning into music lessons, which equates to 17,000 hours of free lessons, and over 1 million in Avid Success scholarships to 156 college students. We are extremely excited by the growth of theater arts through our grant funding. New Lebanon, now in its 4th year of theater arts, shared its model with JC, who is entering year 2, and ISD will start this program this fall. Hamilton Avenue School planned an after-school extended day enrichment program for kindergarten students last year with our funds. This year, it is ready to go and will meet the needs of these young students and their families through the 24-25 grant. True brand new grants for this year are middle school science teams and book break for K-8. Our second annual Avid Success Transition to College program, T2C, took place in July. 12 hours of workshops for 21 recent Avid grads who were paid to attend, focused on college study habits, technology, budgeting and saving, college culture around drugs and alcohol safety, and more. Avid alumni interned for these sessions and also were paid for their time. Topics for these workshops come from the students, address the hidden curriculum, and bridge the knowledge gap for the first-gen students in this transition. We thank the Greenwich United Way and the Department of Human Services for funding T2C. Make sure to visit the elementary school playgrounds to see the communication boards funded by us and the PTAs. These boards were requested by the principals and provide a new tool to help all children communicate with one another. Our 14th annual Turkey Trot is open for registration, which means the school competition is on. Last year, 996 registrants of the 1,500 were Greenwich Public School students and families. This is our largest fundraising event and makes all of the things I have mentioned possible. Lace up your sneakers, register, volunteer, spread the word, donate if you're away that weekend, and become a sponsor. So many options. GEA and GOSA, thanks for your sponsorships. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to working with all of you this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Jackie Holman, you're up next, followed by Aaron Boxer.
Jackie Homan.
Good evening, Board of Education members. The superintendent doesn't appear to be focused on several concerns you raised in June. The board expressed concerns over the special education program, yet the proposed goal doesn't address concerns over staffing and academic performance of special education students. It's merely a goal to oversee the organizational tasks to run an effective program. The concerns weren't about checking the box to make sure a meeting was held. The growth of special education students was the issue, and the growth of these students is negative. We also started this year with at least 6 paraprofessionals short. Students clearly cannot get the services if we are short of staff every day, and we won't know how this program is doing until March, or should I say whether the meetings are being held, since that's the goal and the metric you're using to test success. There goes another year with no action on the concerns you expressed a year ago. How long will you let this go before you make changes to create an equal opportunity for challenged learners to succeed? There's nothing in the superintendent's goals regarding communication over public concerns. So many times last year, we were told nothing when a man walked into Western and hung out in the girls' bathroom for 30 minutes. We need better communication than vague emails and Friday evening phone calls that are insufficient. There's nothing in the superintendent's goals to address the high level of staff and administrator turnover, nor the development of internal resources to strengthen educators and administrators. The priorities are directed at providing legal briefings to the board, opportunities for the board to visit the schools, and monthly check-ins with the superintendent. Shouldn't that be a given for the job and not a new goal? There's nothing in the goals regarding the need for administrators to collaborate with school staff. Do you know what they need? Is it addressed in the budget? Did principals have input into their budgets? And once again, board members, your beloved superintendent who barely survived an extension vote last year is not listening to you and has her own agenda. As long as she scrapes by, you seem to be okay with letting it slide another year. Maybe this will be the year you hold her accountable. Whatever happened to the outrage over the change in foreign language learning in elementary schools? Did you just give up? Did she beat you down? Or maybe you won't impact your own children, so you're okay with what's happening? And as a reminder, you are all elected to protect all of our children. Will you hold Superintendent Jones accountable to the strategic plan metrics that she herself selected and you agreed to? You certainly didn't last year. Or will you let that slip again and come up with another excuse? By the way, to change topics briefly, it's really bad practice to allow a left-leaning organization
30 seconds.
to conduct a voter registration drive to save democracy right outside the front door to an elementary school on open house night. Shame on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Up next is Aaron Boxer, followed by Peter Schweinfurth.
I see Doug Boxer is online.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and I apologize. I grew up with the Doug Boxer, I meant to say.
That's all right.
My
I have
bad.
It's, my family has boxers too, at the dogs. All right, I'm gonna start my 3 minutes now. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. My name is Aaron Boxer. I'm a lifelong resident of Greenwich, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Diversified Education Services. I'm going to read a statement here. As the new school year begins, Greenwich Public Schools has a chance to rethink its approach and move away from the culture that has led to spending nearly 10% more per pupil than other Fairfield County districts. By focusing on student needs and using taxpayer money wisely, GPS can better support every child, including those with disabilities. Currently, GPS prioritizes denying parents their rights over providing essential special education services and misallocates resources that should enhance student outcomes. The administration must be held accountable for empowering its outstanding faculty to prepare students for the future. The cost of providing appropriate services, about $27,000 per student, is minimal compared to the expense of prolonged litigation to limit the number of students identified with disabilities. It is also a moral and legal obligation. Another crucial issue is the inconsistent approach to AI. Greenwich continues to ban ChatGPT, taking a passive stance on a tool that could revolutionize education and improve student outcomes. GPS needs a clear plan to integrate AI into curricula, teaching students to use it effectively. As a leading district in the state, Greenwich has the opportunity to set a precedent for AI usage across Connecticut and beyond. Relying on state government to dictate policies risks delaying the adoption of one of the most significant educational tools of our time. And one more point about special education. I've experienced special education as an educator and an advocate. I'm also a stepfather to 2 children with disabilities. Too often, I've seen a parent pleading with admins in a PPT. Although equipped with an evaluation, which they've spent thousands on from a reputable pediatric neuropsychologist, detailing a litany of DSM diagnoses and providing evidence of academic impact, still they are repeatedly denied services. And they come back year after year, but to no avail. As far as I'm concerned, the 504 plans and STARS programs are for many, not all, but they are consolation prizes and not fit for special education students. Those are for regular education kids. RTI was intended to identify students with disabilities, but in Greenwich, it's often used to delay or deny necessary identification. I understand that not every request can be met, but using loopholes to deny services is immoral and represents a cultural problem. Not long ago, Greenwich identified only 10% of students
20
in special
seconds.
education, thank you, while the state average was 17%. That's a 7% differential, and that's ridiculous. It also means that hundreds of families have been denied their right to a free and appropriate public education. Despite some improvement, Greenwich is still 3% below the state average. PCG claims it's been addressed, but it is far from fixed, and it's time for a cultural change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Aaron. Up next, Peter. And then followed by Javier Alman.
Javier, actually, I had asked Javier to speak for EMAC, and then I concluded that I should do it myself. So he will not be speaking. I'm here to represent EMAC. Good evening, and thank you all for allowing me to speak to you. I'm Peter Schweinfurth. I chair EMAC, which is the Board of Selectmen's Energy Management Advisory Committee. I'm here tonight to share a little bit about the work we've been doing and to express our eagerness to collaborate with you. EMAC began working closely with Blaise Leviton in 2022, investigating ways to address the issues with the geothermal system at the Hamilton Avenue School. Early in 2022, we organized a meeting with BrightCore Energy, that led to the retention of the Farnsworth Group, which resulted in their preliminary analysis in August of last year. In January, Dr. Jones invited EMAC to assist GPS in evaluating the options presented in the Farnsworth Group report, either renovating the existing ground source heat pump system or replacing it entirely with a conventional HVAC system. EMAC, of course, was very happy to help. While our initial collaboration was promising, we've not been part of recent stages of analysis or discussion. I believe this is partly due to the transition from Blaze to Ben Branyon as COO of GPS, and I completely understand the complexity of such a transition. I had a positive working relationship with Blaze, and I'm pleased to say I've been building the same with Mr. Branyon. As you may know, EMAC advises the town on improving energy efficiency, reducing costs, and decreasing our carbon footprint. Our members are passionate about this work, as we have some incredible expertise on our team, including HVAC and geothermal professionals, as well as experts in renewable energy and green building design. We're not just ready, but truly eager to engage with GPS and the Board of Ed on this project. Specifically, we can help you complete the preliminary ACOM report, particularly by exploring how we might leverage incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act and Eversource, as well as potential federal and state grants, which could potentially offset a significant amount of the replacement cost. To give you some context for why we should all feel strongly about this, GPS spent over $3.25 million on energy in fiscal 2024, a 28% increase over fiscal 2020. We believe there are real opportunities to reduce these costs, and this project is just the beginning. Our vision is to help bring the Hamilton Avenue School building back to what it was originally designed to be: a clean, energy efficient, affordable,
30 seconds.
and easy to operate building that's resilient for the future. We're excited to work with all of you to make this a reality, and we're always here to offer our support and our expertise. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing what we can all accomplish together. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Up next is Alexandria Stevens.
Good evening. My name is Alexandra Stevens, and I am the parent of a COSCOB third grader, a GHS senior, and a graduate of the GHS class of 2022. I am also a GPS teacher, but I'm speaking tonight primarily as a parent. When my sons were at COSCOB school, they had Spanish instruction for 100 minutes per week. Starting this year, their younger sister and the other grade 3 to 5 students have Spanish instruction only twice a week, totaling 60 minutes, a 40% cut to instructional time. I only became aware of this change to the elementary foreign language curriculum when my daughter's teacher sent home a weekly academic schedule. Parents received no notification of this change from administration or from the board, nor has there been any explanation for the change to the elementary curriculum. In my opinion, a 40% cut to instruction is pretty significant in terms of foreign language development. Just doing the math, this cut means that grades 3 to 5 elementary students receive 24 fewer hours of Spanish instruction per year, or 72 hours prior to starting middle school. Research shows that foreign language study in the early elementary years not only improves learning and eventual mastery of the foreign language, but also improves cognitive abilities, positively influences achievement in other disciplines, and results in higher achievement test scores in both reading and math. So it concerns me that the district has made this curricular change without any parent or teacher input. And make no mistake, it is a curricular change when you decrease instruction time by 40%. So I ask, on what evidence or data was this change based? I also have concerns about the board's recent approach to foreign languages in general. Within the last year, K-2 foreign language was eliminated at one magnet school without any parental input and was almost eliminated at another magnet school until parents and students protested. The district is also eliminating the Latin program at GHS. Foreign language positions have been cut, and now GPS has cut grades 3 to 5 foreign language instruction by 40%. At a time when foreign language fluency is even more necessary for careers in a global society, why is the board decreasing foreign language learning? Now to my son. On another note, this is the 6th year in a row that I've had a child in GHS and class sizes are increasing. The last 2 years, my senior has had multiple classes with 27 to 29 students, which was not the case for his older brother just a few years ago. Prior to COVID, the average high school grad class in Connecticut was 21.5. Last year, the state legislature considered a bill capping high school classes to 25 students, reflecting research that too many students in the classroom negatively impacts learning. Yet as a result of the board's decision to eliminate so many positions at GHS over the last 2 years, many core academic classes at GHS have 28 to 31 students in them. When you take into account the increasing number of students who have accommodations, as well as the increasing mental health challenges faced by teens, the increased class sizes are detrimental to both students and their teachers. I urge the board to reinstate the 40 minutes per week of foreign language instruction, and I also ask you to prioritize decreasing class sizes to better suit the learning needs of our high schoolers rather than continuing to cut the number of teachers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Alexandra was our last speaker tonight for public comment. So thank you guys for sharing your thoughts and viewpoints with us. And now we will move on to the next item on our agenda, the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I was just saying when we got here, it feels like forever since we've been in here. So we're back from the summer. A couple of items just as we come back from the school year. First of all, we have planned a security and safety seminar, and I think everybody recognizes, and I know Lil mentioned that from GEA as well, that starting out the year with school shootings makes everybody nervous. Parents have been asking a lot of questions. So Chief Heavey agreed that we were going to come together and do a safety seminar. That will be on October the 16th at 6:30. And it's at Cos Cob, which is still in the center of town, but also just the venue that happens to be open because we're so busy this time of the year. And Chief will be there. Brent will be there, who is our head of security. They will try to have our resource officers there. Of course, I'll be there. But it's really a forum to be able to answer questions that parents have about school safety. We also launched our capital projects newsletter this week. As you know, we do this 3 to 4 times a year. So much information in there because we have so many projects happening around the district. And within just the first few days, we already had 14,000 views, and people are spending an average of 14 minutes. So they're reading it, and I'm hoping that's really going to help everybody keep up. This is the 4th year that we've had that. Our finance team is hard at work at building the budget, believe it or not. We're presenting that in just a matter of weeks. So lots of work happening there. The Riverside feasibility is going to kick off with the formal meeting with staff and the representatives, and that is next week, October the 1st. Again, congratulations to our staff and our administrators on a wonderful open house. Really, thrilled with what our teachers were able to share with our families, and we're getting great feedback about that. Just a couple more items. We do have a difference maker recognition that we're launching this week. And I really encourage people to just take 2 minutes or 4 minutes, super easy form. You put the person's name, their position. It can be anybody in the district. It could be their bus driver. It could be the custodian. It could be a teacher. And it really is just some way that they've made a difference, either for your child, or maybe they're just the person that just greets the children every single day. And you've been watching them for the last decade. And you just want to recognize them. So that will launch this week, and I encourage everybody to fill one of those out. I'll just mention 2 more things. Certainly going into the budget, we always share class size information. We heard that from a couple of speakers tonight. And I do want to assure the board, we have not changed our guidelines in elementary. I think what you're seeing this year, we have some shifts where some buildings are lower, and they're usually a building that might be bigger. I know Ms. Coven had a class she was concerned about last year. But because by the end of the year they got big enough, they are actually small this year. But you've seen that shift to another class at another building where maybe they haven't seen us hit the threshold, where they're still not at 26, but they are at 25. But if you're used to seeing 16s and 18s and 19s, it does feel different. We have not made a change with that. And certainly we'll share the secondary numbers as well. They really don't look any different than they have over the last couple of years, because whenever we reduce FTE, we give that to Principal Mayo and Vice Principal Talata. They look at where the enrollment's low, where someone retires. They know they can absorb. It's not like they go in and just take a core class and just cut those. So I just want to assure the board that, and we'll share that during the budget process, because we always have those numbers for you. And then I'll just share one last thing because somebody was mentioning special education tonight, and we do have an agenda item about PCG. And it is very true that this board, and those of you that have been on here for a while, used to hear delay and deny a lot. I don't hear it anymore. And that is really, and I'm hoping this is what PCG will see when they come out and see what we're doing in the buildings. Our intervention process, MTSS, is fantastic. And every single building in our district has worked really hard on that. And it's correct that we used to be 6 or 7% below the state. And it was because kids would get stuck in intervention and we wouldn't move them along. And we've changed that. And it's been a hard change because now we're at 16%, and that has happened in the last 3 years. The state's at 17. But what it means is that our parents, when they are concerned about their children, have a process, and it's working. So, and when you hear the achievement report, I think you'll get more information about that as well. But I'll leave it at that. Those are some of the highlights starting the year, starting off great. And please fill out a difference maker and nominate somebody. It'll mean a lot to them.
Thank you. Before I ask the board if they have any questions specifically for you, I'll just ask quickly, for the discussion you were just saying, for the difference maker recognition, where would that form be found for parents and other members of the community that would like to?
We will have it in the Friday note, and it'll be right there, the one that goes to everybody.
If you don't have a student in the district, but you're a grandparent, for instance, where would one find that?
We
Is
can put it on the
board?
website as well.
Perfect. That would be wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Jones? Kathleen?
Just want to follow up on the first speaker's, the student's question. It was a good one. I know I was one of the 6 that voted for flex time, but I did say at the time that I wanted there to be analysis as we go through it. And I have seen some of the items that, Hadrian mentioned that I don't disagree with. And so I think it would be important for us. I'd love to know how it is going because I am hearing mixed things. And I know personally the traffic is hard. And I also have a student that's, who's an athlete who was definitely negatively impacted on the club front. So, and I'm just giving a personal anecdote here, but I think it's important that we actually do some sort of quantitative analysis.
And we can certainly do that. And I know that we had said having also Mr. Mayo come at some point on one of these early meetings once they actually have a good understanding. I will say for the traffic, I know it's hard at the high school, but it actually, at the end of the day, is better than it has been. We have, an officer that is controlling the light for the first time, and that is making a big difference. It doesn't mean that you don't get a long line on Putnam because they're controlling it. They're getting everybody out, and then they let the next, go through. But it's the first time we've done it, and it's working. And again, I'll keep watching it, but that was a suggestion from a high school student. So,
The no left turn thing is certainly brilliant. So.
And it's hard to get people to behave. I will say that. We're encouraging, the police to give out tickets. That's the only way you change behavior is if there's some sort of consequence. Because we do have a few from the Wild West that will just, not follow the rules.
But is there any way that we could go left through a parking lot, please? A lot of people have been reaching out to me being like, what is going on with the traffic?
Well, I can certainly share that with safety and security. They're monitoring it like every day. And it doesn't mean people necessarily like it when you change those patterns. We do understand that, but I will say it's better than it has been, as far as being able to get everybody out, but controlling the lights made a big difference.
Just to tack on to that, was my understanding that the no left turn was only from that center exit, but you could still turn left from the very far exit that's, the far end of the parking lot in the middle of Hillside. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's where the students go out.
There's, I guess you would say, 4 egresses technically. One is to the Black Box Theater, which is also right, closer to Putnam Avenue. Then there's the exit for the buses from the Circle and the entrance to the buses for the, Circle there. And then, and then the one by the by the science wing that goes in, which is where parents and students generally come in to, and then there's the one at the very far end of Hillside, which is at the end of student parking. So the one at the end of student parking was my understanding you could make a left. You guys are chuckling at me. Ah, well, that's a whole nother story. I guess we'll take that up with,
If we could,
Principal
if we
Mayo.
could look at that, that would be great.
Does anybody else have any questions? Laura?
So is this thing working? Yeah. Okay. So I know when we heard about the changes to foreign language instruction in the summer, we did not have an opportunity to discuss it as a board. We were told it was a decision on scheduling to capture more time for core instruction in math and ELA. And I feel like this is something that we probably should have discussed because we have gotten a lot of email over the summer from parents who are very concerned. And I don't want to gloss over that fact because I do think there are families who really do value that aspect of their kids' education. And if they really do feel strongly that they want their kids to not have had that change, I just feel like we haven't provided a venue to really vet that through the board. It's much like our cell phone policy, which also did not come to the board, which I really do feel like we should have a thorough discussion about, because obviously it's not a big change for K-5 or the middle school, but it is a very big deal to kids at the high school. And bless those students who are very vocal and started their own petition. They wanted to make their voices heard too. And I want to just be sure that we give these changes the airtime and the thoughtfulness that they deserve. I for one am supportive of having cell phones all away all day, but at lunch, a lot of our students leave. And so, I really think we have to have a cohesive policy that considers all of the reasons why they might leave, including wanting to be able to have their cell phones. So I think we need to, revisit flex time at the high school, foreign language at the elementary level. And not that I'm opposed to having more time for core subjects. But I do think it warrants a bit more discussion. And I sympathize with Hadrian because I've heard similarly from the vocal one the vocal GHS student in my house. So I want to just be sure we give all of these weighty issues the time and consideration that they deserve.
Just to add on, I know that you and I have spoken about this on several occasions, Dr. Jones. And so over the summer, I would like to second the discussion brought forward to us and concerns, just that it's very difficult for parents when decisions are made sort of at the very end of the year or over the summer. And often parents find out once school begins, and for members of the administration or teachers and whatnot, they've had the whole summer to prepare for that. So for them, it's old news. But for parents who find out at the start of the school year, it's not. And while it may be a scheduling decision, and I really support utilizing some of that to give our teachers more planning time, which is something every one of our teachers has said over the years that they want to do, to be able to give more opportunity for academics in the core, other core programs, which is part of our strategic plan. We did set a precedent discussing scheduling with flex time, right? So this was also a scheduling thing. And even for us, if it's not a vote, at least having the opportunity to sort of have that discussion as a board allows the public to hear our discussion and thought process as to why some changes are made. And I find oftentimes when rationale is discussed, people have a better understanding of why changes are made, and it makes more sense in that regard. And I just want to make sure that people understand that we are not saying that foreign language is any less important than some of the other programs that we focus on. I know our strategic plan focuses on improving student growth and academic and outcomes in English language learning, math, and science, but it doesn't mean that we value world language, arts, or physical education any less. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. When we've had issues brought to us, for instance, about Latin at the high school, we've worked through those. But so I'd like to also echo Laura's comments that I just think it's an opportunity for us as a board to understand that whether we have a say per se is not always we may not have the opportunity to vote on something, but it is important for us to at least be aware to have these discussions in a public manner. And so our discussions and our questions are heard and helps others to understand where decisions come and be able to give us input. So
the other thing is we do have a policy committee and, a cell phone policy.
There's a policy report coming.
Oh, how lovely. One more thing. I do want to give some airtime also to class size at the high school. I mean, I know we're pretty consistent. Well, I'm going to blame you for the change because you were the decisive vote for the eliminating staff at the high school. So I think that so you can debate that, but I will say that if we have to reevaluate our staffing as part of this budget process, we do have an opportunity to correct. The BET is the ultimate say, but we do have an opportunity to say, demonstrably, we are seeing our class sizes affected. This is not an ideal scenario for sure. And if we have this opportunity in the current budget process to reevaluate class sizes and the impact of these decisions, then I think, that time is almost upon us and we can recalibrate, if you will, and make sure that we are considering the impact of those budgetary decisions.
I'm give an opportunity for Dr. Jones to just respond because we just sort of went at it a little there.
Yeah, so I'll try to be just very quick. Because these are big topics and I understand that. I did email the board and
Can you address world peace in a moment as well?
sure, I'm great at that.
Well, and then the meaning of life after that.
Okay, sure. So just quickly on flex time, I think one thing to really keep in mind, and I know we'll have lots of discussion because we're watching, monitoring, adjusting, and we will be all year. But if we decide to bring it back, we also really need to be thoughtful about what happens at the end of the day because so many kids left. We didn't know where they were. It was not safe. I didn't feel safe as a school superintendent. We had teachers that would stay because they had to, but a vast majority of our students were not taking advantage of flex at the end of the day. You can move it to the middle of the day. A lot of high schools do that, but if we make that choice, then you have your athletes going later. And right now, I'll follow up with Pete, but we should not have students missing the last block of the day because it's at 2:55, and he weighed in on this decision from the beginning. So just know we follow all those things up, but we're happy to have a big conversation. As far as the cell phone, we do not have a policy. We have the same instructional policies that we've had. We have a regulation, and we knew the state was coming out with guidelines for us, and we were trying to be in front of that. We started meeting in the summer. And again, at the high school is really the only area where we're discussing change. K-8 has not changed. It's just we're trying to be more responsive and be more equitable, I guess, across all of our schools. So everybody looks at it as important from a regulation standpoint. But again, the board can weigh in when you get ready to have a policy. I'm sure the policy committee will spend a lot of time on this. If you want to put them in little pouches and lock them all away, we will do whatever you tell us to do. I just can't imagine that's, there's much support for that in the district. But again, we don't have a cell phone policy. We have a regulation that's just helping our administrators kind of navigate a tough time right now with this whole discussion. The last thing that I'll mention is just on world language minutes. I really don't get emails on that topic. We did in the summer, and it was primarily from one building. So, I told that principal, I'm happy to come to your first PTA meeting, and that way I can answer questions so they better understand in that building where those minutes went and how you've reworked the entire schedule, in which the teachers in that building are thrilled because they had lost a big chunk of time due to all the changes over the last 4 or 5 years, especially with the science of reading, and that have taken chunks away where they used to have more open time. So again, we've made ourselves available. I've been to the high school PTA, I've been to ISD PTA. I go to any of those meetings directly so that we can answer those questions. So, and the principals are doing a good job at their open houses, trying to answer questions as well.
I'll just note, we still have our two student government representatives sitting here. I see you guys. I know you were talking about wanting to talk about policies to discuss with XCOM and the student body. I think we just discussed some topics here that might be of interest to you guys for your next meeting, your meeting that's coming up. Just not to put anything on your agenda, but giving you some suggestions right there. I don't know if anybody else has a question for Dr. Jones or if you guys are ready to move on to committee reports. Okay, we shall move on to committee reports. Who would like to go first? All right, Wendy.
So this is for the Julian Curtis Building Committee. For those of you who don't know the background of Julian Curtis, the educational specs for JC initially called for a rebuild and expansion of the school. And a couple of years back, an alternative phased approach focusing on the ADA compliance and targeted areas to be remodeled were planned instead. There were 4 basic phases were identified. Phase 1 was the elevator. Phase 2 is the front entrance and ADA parking space and access. Phase 3 is the cafeteria, and phase 4 is the remaining work to finalize ADA compliance and the ADA report along with finishing touches. So phase 1 and 2 went out to bid, and we received 3 bids this week. We're going to discuss these bids in our meeting next Friday. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be within budget guidelines. And phase 1 and 2 contractor engagement will begin this year in 2025, this summer when school gets out, right when school gets out, that's when it'll start. And will be phase 3 is the planning for the cafeteria, as well as phase 4, the remaining ADA work and the ADA report and the finishing touches. Those are going to take place with construction for the cafeteria beginning in the summer of 2026. And the final work, phase 4, will begin in 2027. That's kind of our timeline. Sadly, over the summer, Chairman Bill Kelly passed away this past spring. He will be missed. He was an asset to our committee. But we put together a new team. We have David Levine as our new chairman, and also Veronica Chiavaroli, who was voted in at the last RTM session. So we're making progress and things are moving along.
Forward movement's always good. Do we have any other committees?
So I have 2.5 reports. So the policy committee did not meet. We are currently down a member because of the board vacancy. However, informally, we've been preparing for a very busy October on 2 fronts, on 2 hot button issues. One, obviously, is the cell phones. The other, which I want to push back on, was the comment that we're ignoring or not doing anything as a district around AI. Which is not accurate. As I think the board knows, Dr. Jones has been chairing an AI work group throughout the spring and summer, and we're going to be having a lot of very important and robust conversations very soon about about the results of that group and how it will affect policy and with an AI policy. So that's coming soon. The OG committee, the building committee, did continue to meet throughout the summer, and we are on track. The drawings came in, the construction drawings at the 95% level came in August 29th. We are almost done with the phasing plan. There have been meetings with building and fire over the last few weeks, so that we're looking at final budget reconciliation in mid-October, with things then coming to us at our October meeting for final approval. Then it would go to the BET and then the December for the RTM. All things being equal, that puts us on a bidding schedule this winter so that the shovels hit the ground this summer. And then the half report, Karen and I were both, we both attended last night's first SEAC meeting of the year, which was great. The leadership there, new leadership of SEAC, which is the Special Education Advisory Committee, ran a fantastic meeting, and they formed new committees. And Karen, you probably want to chime in, so go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if you had mentioned something more about the committees, but I will say that they are looking ahead to some of the programs that they're going to be putting together and offering to parents throughout the district this year. And information on that will come forward soon once, I guess, their committees do start to meet. And those meetings are open to more than just the voting members of SEAC. So, certainly check the Board of Education and the district website. They should have those dates and how to access those meetings coming up.
Right. Yeah. Every year, SEAC gives us because they serve as an advisory committee to us, and every year they give us a written report and a presentation in the spring with a host of recommendations. The committees this year will not be making new recommendations on new topics, but instead they're going to look at the reports from the last 3 years, which are the 3 years that SEAC's been around, and following up on the recommendations from those reports and the state of the district around those issues now.
As well as the review of the special education audit that we'll be hearing a little bit about later. Are there any other, Lara?
So the Central Middle School Building Committee has a new chair. We congratulate Joe Rossetti as our new chair. Our other chair or prior chair stepped away, not from the committee, but from the chair role for personal reasons. And we're grateful that we have somebody who has some long-term experience in the construction industry for this next sort of critical phase. We were facing a delay from the state in their review of our documents. Dr. Jones put on her cape, laced up her Nikes, and helped us by placing a phone call, and we were able to secure our letter from the state that will allow us to go out to bid. We have really been working with our team to sort of mitigate the time lost due to the state's sort of longer than expected review. The department that reviews grant applications has undergone a complete transformation in Hartford. So we are, always at the mercy of when they get to your application and when they'll review it and approve it and send it up the chain to eventually come to us in the form of a formal letter. So now we have it. We are able to go out to bid. And we are really working to mitigate the time lost. Our shovels will be hitting the ground early January instead of late December. It's not really a perceptible difference, but we are really committed to keeping to our timeline. Dr. Jones has been through this before in other districts and has been a great source of comfort and support because, you can only control the variables you can control. Once shovels hit the ground, hopefully we won't have a severe winter. We can stick to our timeline and we are just, we are just full speed ahead as best we can with the variables that we can control. So that's the update.
Kathleen?
Real fast, Greenwich Alliance, Julie said everything, turkey trot, I think we should all register. That would require me actually getting back on the treadmill in order to prepare for that, but I'll try. Okay, thank you. Number one. And number two is we had a budget committee meeting. Obviously, Cody's still chairing that, but since he's not here, I'm very happy to share that. It was, Ben Brannion was great. He started to show us the preliminary capital plan. And obviously, we'll be hearing a lot about that over the next month. So that's it.
Anyone else? I don't know. Okay. Well, so I'll just give a quick update, besides the fact that we'll be hearing a little bit more from PCG as our next item coming up. So I got the opportunity to sit in on that and hear a little bit about what's going on, but I'll let them discuss that when they're up next on our agenda. And also to fill in those, because not only are we missing one current member who is not available to be here this evening, we are obviously one seat down. The board's been meeting with interested candidates. We were able to finish up those interviews today prior to this meeting, which is why we were a few minutes late. So I apologize again for that. And the board will be looking to set a date to have our discussion on that and to vote in a new member, hopefully much sooner than later. As you know, it's lonely when it's only 7 of us. We need an eighth member to join the band. So hopefully that will be taken care of very soon as we find a time that we can all meet to have that discussion. And I think that's pretty much about it from me at the moment. So if there's nothing else or anybody has questions, if not, we can move on to our discussion items. Anyone? No? Okay, perfect. So then we'll move on to our first discussion item, which is the special education PCG kickoff for the action plan evaluation. Dr. Jones, I don't know if you'd like to introduce.
Sure. And first I'll acknowledge that Dr. Heigenthaler is there with her entire team over there. They want to be in person in case there are questions that you need from any of them. I'm going to invite the team from PCG. You can see Dr. Mellor's just logging on right now. She actually led the initial study for us. So we are absolutely delighted that PCG was able to bring her back again, so that the same person and very consistent who helped put the action plan together is also evaluating how we're doing. So I'm just going to turn it over to her because I know that she has a presentation for us and will explain how this is very different than when they were here the last time, because they're really looking at the action plan.
Thank you, Dr. Jones, and the rest of the Greenwich community. We're so happy to be here tonight, and certainly nice to see some familiar faces and consistency in Greenwich Public Schools. I am Dr. Jennifer Meller. I'm a manager with Public Consulting Group, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mina Cow, who is our project manager on this portion of the project. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in that we have a presentation that we thought would be helpful as a way to ground us in what to expect the next couple months. And as Dr. Jones alluded to, we will be shifting the focus quite a bit from how you experienced this the first time, and that really what we're looking at here is how progress has been made in Greenwich Public Schools specific to special education. I'm going to go through our introductions and our project approach, as well as the methodology that we will follow. As you see here, Mina will be joining us as part of the team, and Dr. Jennifer Baribeau, who was not able to join us this evening, will be a key part of the project. The team that we had on our project before is still with PCG. We still have them as the bench behind the scenes and the knowledge base, but you will see that we're adding to that support for all of you with this project, and you'll be seeing the 3 of us quite frequently in updates to you, as well as time that we will actually be able to be on site. As you remember, we may remember the first review that we did was during the pandemic, so it was quite a different experience. So we are thrilled to be able to see you all in person in the coming months. As a quick reminder, we've had quite a few different touch points with Greenwich Public Schools specific to special education. We started an initial comprehensive special education review study in the 2020-2021 school year. We provided 28 recommendations, which we will touch on briefly this evening. Throughout the course of the following year, we helped guide the development of the special education action plan. We spent extensive hours really going through with the Greenwich Public School staff ways that we could envision measurable progress that needed to happen based on the recommendations and the key components of what that needed to look like over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. PCG also led out some trainings as part of that implementation support to add capacity to the district. And then at the end of the year, developed and presented a report, an implementation report that provided the detail around what happened in the course of the year and the progress that was already being made on some of the recommendations. As you will hear in the description that we have of our current engagement, our goal is to be conducting an evaluation of the implementation progress made in the past bit of time since the end of that first year. So that's years 2 and 3 of the action plan. I'm going to turn this over to Mina, who's going to talk us through our approach and some background before I come back and share some of the methodology with you. Mina?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So just to introduce the approach that we take to our program reviews, we wanted to hit on a few points. So first, our reviews are collaborative by design, and we work side by side with districts to help define challenges, specify goals, and also develop effective outcome-driven strategies, which has been seen in our engagement with GPS. We help you answer essential questions about student progress and program effectiveness, and we also pinpoint specific areas of strength and identify improvement targets. Our review approach is multidimensional, and we always emphasize the participation of multiple stakeholders, and we include both quantitative and qualitative data collection in our process. And this approach is really grounded in our experience and research and best practices. And finally, we aim to continue to strengthen district culture by leading the way with accountable solutions. And these support enhanced collaboration and the engagement of stakeholders, as well as continuous improvement efforts in special education with measurable academic and functional outcomes and compliance, and overall increasing efficiencies. So we wanted to go over the 4 main research objectives for this current project. So the first objective will be to evaluate the implementation of the recommendations. Our team will be conducting interviews with key stakeholders, reviewing documentation, and observing practices on site to verify the implementation status of each recommendation. The second objective is to measure progress and outcomes. So our team will be working to analyze the data that we collect on student performance, program effectiveness, and other relevant metrics to measure improvements. Objective number 3 is to identify any remaining gaps and challenges. So we will be conducting a gap analysis to determine which recommendations are not yet fully addressed and why, and also identify any new challenges that may have emerged since our original recommendations. And finally, the 4th objective is to update and refine recommendations. So our team will be providing revised or additional recommendations to address any new issues or ongoing challenges in the district. And then we just wanted to quickly overview PCG's special education effectiveness domains, which really are the framework to how we approach our research in special education with school districts. So the first domain is human capital, and it really is about investing in people from recruitment to retirement. So this includes high quality staffing, professional learning, and recruitment practices and retention. The next domain is high expectations, which is about increasing the expectations of students with disabilities by presuming competence. So this really looks at the engagement of students with disabilities and also a positive learning environment for all students. The next domain, systems and structures, kind of looks at policies and practices and looks at how expectations are defined for service delivery, resource allocation, and also data management infrastructure so that there are data-driven decisions being guided by high-quality data. Next, the domain of family and community engagement is looking at how the district coordinates efforts with families and community organizations to improve results. So we really emphasize partnership and collaboration within this domain, as well as family and parent access to the resources and IEP documents that they need. The next domain is learning environment and specialized services. So we are looking at how instruction and interventions are delivered within an inclusionary framework and with IEP fidelity. And finally, the domain of leadership is about embracing partnerships to make informed decisions and provide equitable opportunities for all students.
So we wanted to just highlight for you as a reminder, it sounds like many of you have been part of the district and are already continuing to reference back to the domains and our recommendations and documents that you have. But as a reminder, we use the domains to ground both our recommendations as well as the questions that we ask around practices that are happening in the district. What's different about this study is that we are going to be looking specifically at the areas of recommendation. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 28 of them. They fall within these 6 domains. So there were 13 around learning environment and specialized services, 3 in leadership, 3 in high expectations, 1 in human capital, 3 around systems and structures, and then finally the remainder in family and community engagement. We know the district has done an admirable job of updating the plan, progress made from an internal perspective. The goal here is really to be, in our minds, reflecting back on the reasons why we made these recommendations a few years ago, and then conducting independent research again to provide all of you with an update that both looks at how the action plan has been revised and continued to be built upon, how that's documented, how progress has been documented, evidence that that's happened, and then talking with stakeholders again about these specific areas. At the end of this engagement, we will be hearkening back to the first year's recommendation implementation report, in that we used a graphic, symbols to demonstrate was there progress being made, really were some of the areas that we had recommended just beginning to take traction. And maybe there are others now that are more consistently implemented and that they're in the data-driven, consistent practice piece. So these visuals you will see in our final report, and it is the framework that we'll use so that you have a very clear way and consistent way of understanding the implementation fidelity. I want to move quickly into the methodology. So how are we going to go about doing this? We've divided the work into 3 phases. The first one is happening right now. We're launching with this conversation. We're sharing with the community what to expect. We have already started our weekly project management meetings and have already been underway in the scheduling and assembly of focus group lists so that we make sure we get to the right people who have, some of whom have been in the district for a while and know some of the progress and changes that have happened. Others that we know may be new to the district and can provide us with current information on initiatives that have been underway. What will happen in the coming months, so this fall, is that we will conduct interviews and focus groups virtually. We find that actually we have a much higher level of engagement and interest in being able to make them work when we do them virtually, and it helps with class coverage and things. But we will also come and visit classrooms. So as I mentioned earlier, we are very excited to see it in person now, to see all of you in person. And so we're working on delineating that classroom schedule with really seeing as many schools as we possibly can in that time frame. And then we're looking at documents and data. We have submitted quite a lengthy request of the types of documents and data that we're looking for that all match or map to the recommendations. And so that's really what we're going to be focusing on when we are triangulating the information we collect from focus groups and interviews, from our classroom observations or visits, and then with the actual physical evidence of progress that's been made. We'll then work on a report. I already previewed the kind of structure that it will have. There are going to be some revisions along the way, making sure that we got the data right, that we answered the questions appropriately, and then completing that final report and presenting back here to a school board meeting. We're aiming for in-person, so barring any weather or complications, we really are excited to be there in person to talk through the recommendations or the update on the recommendations and any new progress that needs to be made as part of this. So this is another visual to highlight the 3 types of data collection that we are conducting. And I want to emphasize again that the focus of this data collection is not open and exploratory as it was before. Last time it was an attempt to uncover every rock and every possible area, look in every nook and cranny as to what could be challenges, what could be in need of improvement. This time we are laser focused on the degree to which the 2021 recommendations and the action plan were implemented. We're not exploring new areas. We are really honing in on what it's taken to get this far, and then what has to continue to be done to progress further. This is a visual overview to show you how the schedule will happen. As I mentioned, we are well in the project launch phase, and we'll soon be getting into the data collection phase and talking with many stakeholders in that process, and then really working on the detail of the report and the analysis later at the end of this calendar year, and then coming back to present sometime in the early winter. So I will open it up to any questions that members of the board may have in terms of our process or what to expect in the coming months.
Before I, on this end, open it up to questions, I just wanted to mention, as someone who was involved from the start all the way through the audit and beyond, that much like with the audit that we had done initially, this is going to be done independently from our schools. It is going to be run specifically by PCG, and other than getting the data and information from the district, they will sort of be overseeing all that, and it's been really wonderful to have the opportunity to have members of PCG who were involved in this audit initially involved, as well as individual new key members involved. It really ensures that the review is going to continue to be done independently and has multiple, will continue to add multiple stakeholders to this, much like the focus groups and other projects that we had when we did the review initially. The one difference that I would say from this review to the prior one is that we have asked PCG also to take a look at how some of these recommendations and things have been implemented in the preschool program, as well as Community Connections, as they were not typically part of the review before. So they will be taking a quick look at some of those programs as well, since we've made some changes there in the past few years. So now I'll open it up to questions from the board. Anyone? Mike?
So hi, thanks for coming back. I think the continuity is really terrific. So I'm wondering here, I'm looking at the color wheel here with human capital and high expectations and the different effectiveness domains. And in a lot of our board conversations last year, I guess there were two buckets of concerns. The one was around our ongoing work to fulfill the recommendations of the original audit. But the second one was around outcomes, and if the programs that that we are putting in place are effectively making a difference. Defining that is vague in special ed world. So are we meeting IEP goals? Are we narrowing gaps, or are we supporting student needs as robustly as possible? And I know all that's vague. So I guess I'm not clear in these domains where this is getting at effectiveness when we were talking about student achievement, and how our program is supporting as robust progress as possible.
That's a great question, and I agree. There are indicators can be very broad when you look at them in special education. I would point us back to the last page of the action plan. There are several quantitative indicators that we helped the JPS team look and determine would be the factors that we would say we are making progress. This is how we're assessing it. One of them is an achievement indicator. And so that is one portion of this work that we will also look further into, is disaggregated data in each of those areas. There were some benchmarks that were set. I believe achievement that we believe needed to happen by September of this year. So right now, so those will be the first areas that we will look at to make sure we are demonstrating progress and reliable outcomes when it comes to the fidelity of this plan.
Are there any other questions from the board? No? None? Oh, good. Okay. I was going to say, I don't know if our team wants to say anything, but again, this is independent of them. So if there's anything you'd like to specifically address that we didn't, but if not, I want to thank you guys for being here. I know hard work is going to be put into giving all the documents and data that were requested just from the discussion you guys had the other day. It was extensive. And I will also say to members of the public, if there's questions or concerns that you have, certainly you can reach out and ask them to us as members of the board. I also know that PTA Council, Special Education Committee, and SEAC will also have roles here to be involved as well as in helping sort of get information both ways. Yes, John's shaking his head. Yes, good, perfect. So I want to say a huge thank you to the team over at PCG for joining us this evening. And we look forward to working with you going forward and seeing the results in March.
Great. Thank you all. We appreciate the time tonight.
Thank you.
Perfect. And with that, we will move on to our next discussion item, the Hamilton Avenue HVAC Evaluation Report. Oh, there. Good night, team. Thank you for being here. Our entire audience just dropped by more than 50%. Okay.
We'll talk about geothermal.
All right. I see who's going to be addressing this because
I'm happy to start off. I'm joined today with our Director of Facilities, Dan Watson, and I'll introduce our two engineers from AECOM in a few moments. Just a reminder, this is the first read, no action tonight, but representatives from AECOM will be presenting their independent evaluation of the system. Just a couple points. I don't want to take away any of their presentation, but just 2 points I really want to highlight. The first one is we used one of the points we made is under the reuse of the system, we use the word it might qualify for clean energy tax credit. And that's a very important word, might. I wish I had a better answer tonight, but we are really chasing down the eligibility of the project. One of the things that we run into is the way the ITC and the IRA are written, it's for new installation. This is not a new, so there's a 80-20 rule that we became aware of, and we're working with some consultants just to really chase down, is that number going to be eligible through the process. But as soon as we have an answer, we'll let everyone know, but we're certainly well aware of the fact that once that number is eligible, certainly changes the overall analysis of the report. And the second point I just want to make before I turn it over to AECOM is in the past, the district has made comments about the complexity of the system. I think it's an understatement to say that the experience the district has had is less than ideal with the current system. So that certainly has informed the position they've taken on in the past. I think the report does a nice job highlighting that once you get into the design of it, the operational level and effort will be comparable to a conventional system. So I think the complexity conversation and points that we've made in the past, I think have been resolved going forward. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mike Doherty from AECOM to introduce him and his team, and then certainly answer any questions you may have. So, Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ben. Good evening, everyone. My name again is Mike Doherty. I'm here with Chris Imperato. We both work for AECOM, an engineering company that supports GPS and the town on a wide variety of infrastructure projects. We were requested to conduct, as Ben just noted, an evaluation of the geothermal system at the elementary school. And in that scope of work, the work that we did really focused on an evaluation and review of the existing documents, also a preliminary evaluation of the geothermal system components and design requirements. And that information then fed into the preparation of a report, as again, as Ben noted, that includes our findings, recommendations, including cost estimates to potentially lay out a path forward. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Mike. Like Dave mentioned before, I mean, we had an extensive review of all the existing documents, and one thing we noticed that was missing was is the geothermal field sized appropriately for your school? So our first order of business was to kind of get down and do an overall load calculation for your facility. So a heat load calculation over the course of an entire year to kind of get a feel for, how the loads affect your building. With that information, we can then kind of establish the parameters for sizing a geothermal field. We've had previous reports from the thermal conductivity test when it was originally installed. We did note in our report, however, we had some discrepancies with how that test was done and over the time period that didn't quite follow all the ASHRAE standards that they do nowadays. So with that information, we built a model and ran various simulations to see if we were grossly oversized on our thermal conductivity assumption, what would happen to the field? Would it change the depth of the holes? Would it change the spacing? The main goal for that geothermal field is to provide suitable entering water temperatures for the equipment to work. After all that analysis and attempts, the thermal conductivity testing we found was kind of right on, and the field was sized appropriately for the school. So we had no issues with, even if we did vary that thermal conductivity to a lower value, we still should expect the system to operate effectively. We do note in the report, however, there were some variables that could have caused issues from overpumping the geothermal field with high horsepower pumps, as well as kind of the true pipe changeover system that is currently implemented at the school. If I'm in a shoulder season, for instance, and I'm heating during the morning and cooling in the afternoon, that's a lot of water that was at one point, over 120 degrees, and I've got to bring that back down to do the cooling below 60 degrees. So it's a large volume and potentially could lead to overworking the compressors within the machines themselves. So once we determined that the field was sized appropriately, we were able to kind of explore some options on, all right, let's look at a total cost of ownership of what happens if we reuse the system versus just going down that traditional heating system with a boiler and chiller that you currently are implementing now as a temporary solution. From all that analysis and existing costs that we had from previous reports, we were able to escalate those costs and add some contingency just for today's dollar, since that estimate was done in 2023. We did unfortunately determine that it was not cost effective over a 25-year period to reuse the existing geothermal system. We were seeing better energy performance, but given the cost of gas is still relatively cheap, and our increase in electric usage over the course of the winter time didn't quite pay off in that sense. If we look at, achieving some of these grants that are available potentially, obviously that changes these calculations and analysis. But with the information we have today, it didn't pan out in the end. Some other notes, Dan and Ben and their team, Dan Watson over at the school board, they were extremely helpful in accommodating in all of our questions and our needs and things to get us on site, to get us, into the building and do some of those efforts to kind of prove some of these things where, we had two different drawings for the way the geothermal field was installed, and, we couldn't quite tell which one was right or wrong. Dan and his team, got somebody out there and we dug up the hole and we found that they were installed as per the original design drawing. So that was, a big help in determining, the overall system. I know I could probably talk for hours and hours, but I'd really love to open it up to questions and see what kind of information you may have or want to know out of this. I mean, I'm not trying to poke holes in anybody's previous designs. I just want to provide you guys with as much information as you can to make a good decision here moving forward.
Mike?
So thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Chris, and Mike. This was a fascinating report, not my area. But so let me make sure that I understand the report. So because you said not cost effective. So basically, Michelle, I have this right. So basically, we're pricing this out, cost of energy and whatnot, 25 years into the future, going with the traditional chiller system would be a savings of about 800,000. Is that what, do I have that right?
Correct.
As opposed to replacing the parts, like the two pipe part of the geothermal that needs to be, not the field, but the parts that need to be replaced.
Correct. So, we tried to make it as effective and least disruptive as possible with that new design. So most of our work would be dealing with the mechanical room down in the basement and the mechanical penthouses up on the roof. So to try to avoid as much disruption and reuse as much of the system as we could. Hence, we kind of got to this system that, you would traditionally see a better performance and a way better payback from a brand new ground up geothermal system, the way we would have maybe designed it differently if we had the ability to renovate the entire suite.
And I know you don't want to punch holes in other people's work, from 20 plus years ago and whatnot. But tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but if I'm reading this report, it sounds like the original system just wasn't designed properly. Is that, and that's why we've been having, particularly for the shoulder seasons.
Very much in the shoulder seasons, and the benefits of a geothermal system is allowing the building itself to share energy within itself. In this scenario, I either have to make cold water or make hot water, and that's it. In other scenarios where you can run a varying system, I can have one air handler in one zone of my building heat while the other zone cools, and those energies kind of offset each other, and I don't need the field in some instances to condition the water, if you will. So having this kind of two pipe system, I think, was a downfall, but it could have been overcome and still operated efficiently. We just don't know enough previously to know how it was operated in the beginning.
Right, so that's what I was, so that's kind of where I was going, because Ben, I know you're still trying to chase down answers to grants and things like that. I guess my original thought was if there's a liability issue here with the original installer of this, if there was any negligence here, if this thing never was operated the way it was intended. It sounds like, I'm not sure we have enough information or not.
No, I don't think we have enough information. I also would say I think the time has not been our friend, so it's hard to go back that far to actually start making statements of what could have or should have happened.
Anybody else have a specific? Oh, Sophie, then Laura.
I mean, I guess in approaching this, the question of what to do with the system, I think there's two issues for me anyway. One is, what is the more efficient system? And it sounds like the geothermal system is the more efficient system. If we rehabilitated it, it would use less fuel. And then it's what's the more cost efficient system. Actually, I'm going to add a third thing. But so the cost efficient, I think it's really hard for us to make a determination about what is more cost efficient if we don't know whether or not we have rebates available to us, especially if they would be somewhere between $1.2 and $1.6 million. And, we're talking about the difference between 3.3 and 3.9. So that's a big swing. So I think we definitely need some more information about that. And also I have real pause. I note AECOM did not do the pricing for the conventional system. They say that that was done by another firm back in 2023, and then you did some escalation to that cost. And, you know, I'm sure you massaged it as best as you could, but I'm a little worried if, like, I want to have a really high degree of confidence in what it's going to cost to fix that, you know, what it's going to cost to fix the geothermal system, whether or not rebates are available, and what is it really going to cost to install a new conventional system before we would try to make a decision. And the last thing is, you know, timing on the construction of either of these two systems, whether rehabilitating the geothermal or putting in conventional. Is one faster? Would it be less disruptive to our students? And also, frankly, because the temporary system is disruptive to the community. So, you know, that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind as well. So I don't know if you can speak to those concerns, but those are mine. Thank you.
I will try to answer some of those questions, but the first one I'm going to kick over to Dan Watson. I appreciate the heads up you gave us earlier on the question about the estimate for the conventional system. So Dan, do you mind answering that question about the conversation you had?
Sure. The engineering firm, Lero, was contracted to look at the system and provide a design or a preliminary design for a more traditional system. They gave us a price that you had mentioned earlier that was $23. They are at about 60% in design right now, and I spoke to their team today. They have a high level of confidence in the number that they had provided, you know, even without as much detail as 100% documents would provide. So we're very confident in where we're at with the number for the traditional system.
The other question I recall is the construction time. I think, as Dan already mentioned, the issue that we're essentially 2 to 3 months ahead of where geothermal would have been, simply because of the work that was already done. But in the report, it mentions about 26 weeks, I think, beginning to end of geothermal. We would just need, once we have a path forward, we would be able to true up that time period. But simply because of where we're starting with the design of the conventional is already at 60%, that gives this a slight head start to compare the two. And the third point I remember is the immediate issue with the noise with the neighbor. We have engaged through AECOM acoustical engineers, and we are going through the due diligence of what solution makes sense, particularly given, regardless of the decision made in the future on the system, the current solution there will be in place for a while. So we want to make sure we mitigate that noise, but we are working on solutions, but we're not prepared to address it right now.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. So I'm unclear, Dan, with what you were suggesting. Have we already engaged with a firm to design a conventional system? Like, have we already contracted with them to do that?
Yes, and we're at a point where we stopped at 60%. It didn't make sense, financial sense, to move forward until we were better informed of which way we want to proceed, whether it's to rejuvenate the geothermal or go with a more traditional.
Okay, got it. Thank you for refreshing my memory on that.
Laura?
I have, as you might imagine, a few questions, and I'm so grateful for this report. So the first and most important one is there any disruption to, you know, the daily operation of the HVAC system that we have via the interim solution, I'll call it? In other words, can this work be done while the kids are in the building without interruption to their HVAC needs? So, you know, I see 26 weeks and I worry, anything that's quite so long or can't be done over the summer, like, will they have to take anything offline, that would prevent them doing consistent work at the building while it's inhabited?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, Ben, I don't know if you wanted to take that or not.
No, I was going to throw it to you anyway. So
yes, I mean, as they have to, in our scenario, we would have to change the entire the air handling system in the penthouses. So, the time that it needs to do that work to remove an air handler and put a new one in, that area would have to be down for that to happen. Depending on how easy it is to get in and out, it could take, a couple of weeks. But, the intent would be to kind of get that up and online as soon as they could. But yes, there is going to have to be some downtime, even in the conventional system scenario. They're adding some additional features and things for some dehumidification and others that would require some downtime, but not exactly sure how without kind of all the details of their work.
So it could not all be done over the summer. I mean, I don't think that building has operable windows as part of the geothermal.
Sure, and so potentially for over an entire summer, the work could be done because we're trying to reuse as much as we can. It could all be done over the summer while folks are not in the school. For sure.
So either one, the bulk of what would be disruptive could be done over the summer.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's good news.
Could we have a design ready and a contractor on board by the summer? Probably not, but obviously.
Okay. Thank you. I have a couple other questions. The Farnsworth report and your report also have mention of a cooling tower. I see one in table 4, and I just wonder, how big are those typically? Because it's a kind of a tight site.
Is that the lifespan of equipment?
It says comparison of life estimates, and I see cooling tower. So I don't know if one is essential to either system. You'll have to educate me.
Sorry. Yeah. So this table is just straight out of a book that covers kind of all of the equipment and their life expectancies. So while we don't have every single piece of equipment in this list, we do have chillers and heat pumps and things like that do apply. So not everything in this table does apply. In the Farnsworth report, they did mention a cooling tower. In our scenario, we would not require a cooling tower. And in the other system, the traditional system, it's an air-cooled chiller, very similar to what you have now as your temporary system that's sitting out there.
Okay, so no cooling tower.
No
That's
cooling
also
tower.
good news. And then there is a next steps in section 5.2. It's like suggests some field testing and flushing and purging, and I just didn't know if that work was included in the estimate that we are evaluating.
So Dan and his folks have already done the field locations and the flushing, the purging, I guess I should say, and testing of the existing piping that's in the ground. The TC testing has not been done. The replacement of the existing vault spouts and piping has not been done.
So is anything that's listed here, it's all included in the pricing that we have?
The TC testing is not, only because I think we've had enough information to basically say the original report that we got was acceptable, and it really doesn't change how the system would operate if we found it's lower or a higher testing.
I don't even know what TC testing means. I just didn't know if it was
Sorry.
an additional cost.
Thermal conductivity testing. If we
Thank
were
you.
to do one, they're about $30,000 We got some quotes. They're anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 just to do one test, but we don't feel that it provides much benefit.
And then just to add, the replacement of the valves and the structure is included in our.
Is included, correct.
Yep.
Is that, do you have any other more questions, Laura? Okay. Does anybody else have questions? I mean, I have some, but I just, but if you have one that's a follow-up to this, if not, I'm going to pass and then you.
No, I give Kathleen a chance.
Okay.
And come.
The floor is yours.
Well, I'm following up directly on what Laura was asking. So you don't feel like any additional thermal conductivity testing would be helpful or necessary because you can use the simulations that you did based on the information? Okay, I just want to confirm that.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. So that's all you.
So, I mean, a few things. I mean, I guess I need a lot more analysis, because the headline and it's like all things, right? The headline is one thing, and so it really needs a lot of explanation, because it doesn't feel good, right? To go and scrap an expensive geothermal system. It never feels good to just throw away anything, but in particular, it feels morally wrong to throw away a geothermal system. And I sit here and I feel like I do have to go through the numbers in a lot more depth because, you know, geothermal is supposed to have a high upfront cost and then low operating costs. And I understand now how you're walking me through why the operating costs on a relative basis aren't as low as they should be. But I guess I need to look a little bit more at your assumptions on the conventional side. I know you guys didn't do that, but you know, like fuel costs that are relatively low right now. So over 25 years, like what was your assumption? Because that makes me concerned. Again, I haven't gone through it. So, and I know you have a discount rates. And then of course there's the fact that, and you've been very upfront about that, that you're not considering the grants. And I feel like at this time, at the very least, we should have put some sort of probability on that, you know, like you should have not just made it a 0, but to me, there has to be some grant out there to even refurbish a geothermal system just because that's the way the world is going right now. So it's a little bit like for Central Middle School, right? If we were to build it from scratch, you're getting more of a percentage back from the state than if you're refurbishing it. I suspect there's something, or perhaps vice versa, but I suspect there's something similar to that in this world. And so I just don't feel good taking this as it is today without like many, many more questions. I admit I don't have them all tonight, but I will plan to send them because, and I'll add one more thing. The RTM, our legislative body, was very loud and clear about this. And so even if it got out of this board, I'm pretty sure it's not going to get past the town of Greenwich. And so I wouldn't want to waste our time without at least having really good answers, and I don't feel like I have them yet. So, thank you.
I don't know if anybody else that hasn't spoken has a question yet for this one, because I'll jump in then quickly. I think Sophie asked a bunch of my questions, which was, the timing for both the changeover, to refurbish the geothermal system, and to change over to a new cooling system and how that would impact our students in an educational program in that building, because our responsibility as a Board of Education, first and foremost, is the education of our students and also, support the facilities that they are educated in. But to not disrupt that program is exceptionally important. I know we've heard from the neighbors as well, so Sophie addressed that. But I think I also will second what Kathleen was saying. I just felt like we need a lot more detailed information and when it comes to the budget, because nobody wants to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But if that geothermal system was designed, it feels like the Stone Ages from this point, but long ago, before most schools and districts and things like that were putting these into these types of areas. And so I do think, I know, Ben, you mentioned, we need a little more information on grants and things that might come back. But I would also ask how many other towns, not personal use, but other towns in, Connecticut, for instance, have installed, geothermal systems way back when we did. Because again, the way the systems are used certainly has changed in that period of time. Maybe there aren't grants for refurbishment or reuse, but maybe that's something we need to push our state legislators to look into, because I doubt that there's many that have had a geothermal system sitting there as long as ours is. So do you guys know how many other districts or towns may have installed something like this as long ago as we have?
We don't right now.
I would love to know the answer to that, because if it is minimal, then I think it's an area for us to push back on possibly getting money back from the state, because again, it's something, an initiative the state would like to take, as well as something that's in our COPD, right? Okay, for the town. What? POCD, well, whatever. Sorry,
I would like to stress, that we certainly share the view on the grants or the tax credit. Just staff really looks at this as, we just can't promise the cost savings. So at the end of the day, we didn't want to put any plug number in unless we could justify it. And I truly wish I could sit there and say we chase that down and it's eligible for ITC. ITC seemed to be the most advantageous for the district. We're not aware of any current state grants. I think there are some federal grants out there, but even when you compare the numbers that we were looking at, ITC was the most attractive from an expense or from a tax or revenue credit back, pure cash back. But we're certainly chasing that down. But ultimately, once we have that answer, it's really the board's choice. And I think it's a great reminder. Some members have mentioned that the SOMAR from the RTM and others. I think we clearly understand the environment we're entering into and an expectation, but we also wanted to make sure we had an independent evaluation of what was in front of us. And we're really just trying to move this forward as fast as we can. But once we chase down the ITC or other options, we'll certainly circle back.
So that just brings me to the other questions. I know we were talking about timing. There is a real-time cost. We are renting a system that is costing our district. Oh, yes, I was about to say, I have the number. It was $411,055, right, per month for rental? Not per month, per year. Sorry, per year. Just checking. Sorry for that. Per year. So, so that's, yeah. So we've rented it, what, for 2 years? So we're almost $1 million in, and you're telling us that we're for that's 800,000, right? And it's going to be, yeah, we're in our second year. So we've already had to pay for the rental costs for this year up front, right? So, and you're telling us you don't think we'll be having this done and ready to go, whatever choice we make, by this summer. So that's another year of rental costs. So there are real-time costs involved the further we go. And I think that's really important for us to understand. And I know we're coming up on the capital budget being presented to us. I know we're going to have a discussion with our BET members, when it comes to this project, because this is a project that's outstanding from years past, and it will impact this year's capital budget. So I think that's exceptionally important for us to consider as well. So my ask to you guys is, the sooner we can get real-time numbers or thoughts on what we can get back from the state or anything like that, the better it will be for us, because we're going to be coming to a time crunch, I think, and how this impacts our students going forward as well. So, Mike was next. Sorry. Yep.
In all honesty, given what you're saying about costs and time and things like that, yeah, it'd be great if we could get some savings back and find grants and things like that. But now, and I think it's really super smart that we were able to get this independent analysis. But in the worst case scenario, based on this independent analysis, we're looking at the cost of continuing of making the existing geothermal system there operable. It's going to cost $800,000 over 25 years. That's $32,000 a year. I mean, let's not get carried away. This is not big numbers. This is pretty much, I mean, I look at that as equivalent particularly because goodness only knows what nobody really knows what the price of gas is going to be in 20 years. You guys have done your best estimate, and I appreciate that. I think we've heard from a impassioned part of the community and the RTM that they believe strongly in investing in the geothermal. I think the externalities around pollution are not in that 800,000 calculation, and they should be. I'll say right now, I am not a yes vote for the traditional chiller. I think, given these numbers, I think it behooves us to move forward with the geothermal as quickly as possible.
I'm going to surprise myself and disagree with you, only because I don't want to spend $800,000 to save 90. I'm looking at the energy consumption over 5 years for both systems, and the savings is 96,000 over a lifetime for the energy cost, because don't forget the geothermal system is still using a boiler, so which is fired by gas. So I think the analysis does not, okay, so we've already lost the grant that we were going to get for the traditional system because we were not approved by the RTM for the system we and the BET unanimously voted for. We're now going to flush another $1 million down the drain on a temporary system because, we're further along in the design of a traditional system, whereas we're looking at 26 weeks for geothermal. So then the time has a cost. We've already been burning fuel. I can't tell you what it's costing in fuel and emissions to run the system that we've got that's angering the community that it's in. And I'm just I don't know how we look the BET in the face and say, we want to spend an extra almost $1 million on top of the money we're already literally setting on fire and burning in the parking lot to save $96,000 on a system. We're talking about a 25-year lifespan on a system that's been in the ground for almost 20 years already. So I don't even know how good a 25-year assumption is. Because that system, those wells have been there for 20 years. Are they going to last another 25? I don't know.
Chris, do you mind addressing that? I know we spoke about that internally.
Sure. Yeah. Geothermal field itself, there's really no moving parts. It's that the piping itself is warranted for 50 years. So it's really the internal building parts and pieces that fail way earlier than a geothermal field will. So there's no concern with that field lasting another 25 years or longer.
That's refreshing.
Does anybody else have any specific questions for the team tonight? No? Okay. So I know this is a heavy duty report that we got with only a couple of days to really dive in, and there's a lot there. I know we've asked some questions which we can pull together and send over to you. And I would suggest for the board, if there's any additional questions we want to ask prior to getting an additional look at this, we compile those and send them to Dr. Jones. You can send them whatever, right, and you'll compile them. Yeah, again, I do think that this is very time sensitive because we are literally, as Laura said, sort of burning money. And, obviously I do think it warrants a discussion with our BET colleagues because it will impact things. So that's just a 10-cent thought. So, all right. Speaking of money, our next discussion is our monthly financial report.
Thank you, Mike and Chris. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Sure.
I don't know, Ben, you want to?
Just a couple points. The report in front of you, we did a quick update this afternoon on the gift report. As we were doing a double take on it, we noticed that there's a double counting occur between the reporting that occurred through the Alliance and then through Hamilton Avenue. And we just saw there was a little bit of overstating at GHS. So the updated report that we published this afternoon, the only change was the gift report. And when you compare the prior year gift reports, you pretty much everything's in line from 22, 23, and 24. That was the major change that we just from published. And the only other point I would make, and certainly answer any questions you have, is, you know, we did end the year spending 99.56% of the operating budget, which is very similar to fiscal year 23, where we were at 99.51. That's when you're coming in around 800,000. That's, you know, you're coming in on fumes, to use that analogy.
So that, I don't enjoy that analogy. So I was just going to make a note before I open this up for questions from the board. I think it's exceptionally important, you know, because we very rarely have the opportunity to publicly acknowledge how much support we at Greenwich Public Schools get for our students and our schools from our partners in education. You know, the PTAs, PTA Council, and the Alliance in particular also. But I really did want to take a moment to note how important and appreciated those contributions to the Greenwich Public Schools, our programs, our staff, and our students, how appreciated and important those are, both monetarily and in non-monetary ways, such as the countless hours of volunteerism and dedication to our schools and community from these organizations and volunteer groups. So before we get into a discussion, I really, since the gift, you know, report is is here tonight, and we have the report from the Alliance additionally, I really would like to extend a huge thank you from us to all of the PTAs, PTA Council, Alliance, and other partners in education for all that they contribute to our schools, and for the continued yearly increases that we keep seeing from you guys. So thank you guys again. Your support really truly does not go unnoticed. It is very noticed and very appreciated, and we don't often get the opportunity to publicly thank you. So I wanted to take that opportunity. And now, anybody have a question? I see people looking through. No questions? Anyone? Nope. Okay, going once, going twice. And on to the budget transfers. Still you, Ben.
Just information, these are the transfers that we needed to do to balance the what we call major object codes, just so we could close the fiscal year. But they were just information, none of them required board action.
Thanks. Anybody have a question on the budget transfers? Going once, going twice. All right, sold. So thank you, Ben. Appreciate you presenting these to us. And I think we can then move on to our summer school executive summary. Dr. Jones?
Thank you. We once again had a great summer school. We had 318 students who were involved in pre-K through fourth grade for just a regular summer school. And then we also had our tutoring program, which we started that during COVID, and that's been something that some families really prefer. And we had 55 students participate in that. So again, overall 318 students. For elementary staffing, we've listed those out for you so that you can see we had 75 general ed teachers, special ed teachers. It's all of our certified staff, 51 professional assistants, a nurse, IT, administrative assistant, and a supervisor. And that is the elementary program. We kind of repeat that. And we, of course, adjust the staffing for secondary, which was the very next slide behind there. And then we provided the overall expense, which the board always requests and wants to know how much we spent. And we've given you what the ESY, which is extended school year for special education, and what that staffing cost was, just over $589,000. And then our regular summer school staffing is $568,000. That does include all the way through high school for the bridging courses and the different courses that are offered. And then when you look at the total cost, that was just over 1.4 million. And we went ahead and included last year's costs, because again, that's a question you always ask. How did we look last year? How do we look this year? And what you'll notice is we had a little bit more cost in that salary, like for non-ESY. And that's not abnormal for salary, obviously, to go up. The salaries do go up, and they're paid their actual daily rate, their per diem. And transportation, interestingly, went down, and with bus monitors, and supplies, of course, are slightly up. step. But overall, we had a great summer school. There is a slide in here that gives you on the elementary level. And you can see that our goal with 25 days, that's not a lot of days, is to try to get kids to not have that summer slide. And we did a good job with that this year. When you look at the high school data, you'll notice they had a great completion rate for students that either wanted makeup credit or they were getting a class off their schedule for a variety of reasons. But again, all of our students but one passed, their courses that were enrolled, and we had a good summer school. So I'll leave it at that and see if you have questions.
I have a quick comment and then questions. I just noticed that we included the data for the K through 6th grade ELA, like via DIBELS for student outcomes, but we didn't add any achievement data for the math. And I know we won't be able to get that tonight, but I was just hoping if we could get that information to see if the summer school math program also provided the necessary academic support for our students. And I also saw the number of pre-K through 5th grade students who enrolled, but we didn't include data on how many registered actually attended or their attendance rate. So I was hoping we could get those figures, versus as well as, students were invited per grade versus the number that actually enrolled. So, and how many students that weren't invited by us actually chose to opt in. I'd love to get that. I have a few other actual questions, but then I'll let Mike ask some questions first.
It's less a question than a comment because I remember talked last time before the summer talking about really hoping that this report would have like we talked about with PCG outcomes, and I was really great to see the reading information here on the summer slide and takes and that wasn't something in previous reports. So I really do appreciate the focus here on student learning, I think, in the program.
And I might just add on the math, the way they approach it in the summer, and I'll follow up with Mike Reed for sure with that as well, but because it's targeted on just certain strands. And so I'm not sure how they actually assessed that. It's a little bit different than reading.
I just know in last year's report and prior reports, we've gotten some of that data. So that's just sort of why I was asking. I was just hoping that we could take a look because I know the times for their programs, you mentioned the timing for the programs was assigned based on need, which I think is fantastic, so that we have, the appropriate amount of time for students to access the information they need to be successful. I wasn't sure if that was approached to cut down on absenteeism or to support student success in data, but without seeing how we did in the other area that we were focused on for the summer, which was math, I think, we would need to look at that because I know the budget went up. Even though some of the numbers, enrollment went down and up in different areas. So that's all I was just curious about. Anybody else have a question? No? Anyone? I have one other then. Do you want to jump in or do you want me to ask mine first? Okay. Well, now, of course. So I just wanted to ask a quick question. Because we had a lot of the numbers for students that enrolled were high, and then the students that actually attended was lower. Specifically, I know, when we're building, because we got those numbers in June, I was looking at the difference between enrollment in June versus students that attended, et cetera. We base our staffing on those numbers, right? So I just wanted to sort of see, because we had a decreasing number of students in grade 5 through 12 who attended the summer school versus those enrolled in June. Like, have we reached out to those families to see why they didn't end up attending? And also how that might have impacted our staffing number and budget for the summer school? Because I assume, again, that we hire staffing based on the numbers enrolled, not who actually shows up on day one.
I would say that's probably one of our biggest challenges in that getting children that want to go, parents that say, oh, we're going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. And so then they miss 10 days, and you only have 25. And that's why we try to really, when we're looking at our data, how many students were able to come 20 out of 25 days, because then we can expect to not have summer slide, but if they only come 10 or 15 times because maybe they went to another summer camp. But that's why some of the parents are choosing the tutoring option where it could be, 2 or 3 days a week. But It definitely impacts staffing, and we've already had that discussion because I do think, for instance, in K-5, we need to be looking at the trend year over year because coming out of COVID, it's changing a little bit each year. But I don't think we needed the number of teachers that we hired. We probably could have gone a little bit lower, knowing that if this is the trend we're going to be seeing going forward, and still have, because the groups were very small.
Yeah, I just note in the report, you specifically noted the cost for staffing had gone up. So I just want to make sure that we're not, spending money on staffing that we don't need because parents aren't showing up. So if there's any way to reach out to parents that enrolled and didn't show up, just to see why their plans may have changed, it may help us better. What, Laura's, give me a look.
You think that somebody's really going to call up families and say,
It's an email that you can simply say, we noticed your child.
I can tell you that I don't know that that's a smart use of our resources to, after the fact, ask parents why they chose camp instead of summer school.
Well, my point is these people were, we have families that enrolled and we had those enrollment numbers in June. And I suppose if somebody wasn't, if they changed their plans, why they had not reached out to say that. The only reason I ask is I ask every year and we still haven't gotten the answers. That's why.
Yeah, so let me just also say that when we get our early numbers and we invite students, the number of students, and if we don't see the numbers coming in for the number of students that we invite, we don't hire that same number of staff. What really is making it more challenging are the students who just don't come, consistently. And you're already in place. Summer school's already started. You're in the first or second week, and we've made a commitment to the teachers for summer school. So that's where it's tricky. And we need to look at that very carefully going into this next summer.
But I will say they don't owe us an explanation. Like for my son, we did not do this because it wasn't going to work for our family. But I mean, we don't require them to answer us. So I don't know that data is particularly helpful.
The number that I was looking at was not the number that was invited. It was the number that said they were already enrolled. That's the difference. So if you enroll in a program and then do not show up, it is important for us to understand why, so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future and spend money needlessly. That's the only question.
Asking why did
Oh, no.
they choose?
No. If someone's invited and chooses not to attend, that's fine. But if you have already enrolled in a program and we expect you to show up and base our funding, budget on that, and then you don't show up, I think it's important to understand why those plans have changed. That's all. I mean, it's not just one or two.
If
That's
you need
why.
help, I'll
charge you. It's just a lot of money. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Anyone? Then I'm happy to hear about the good things that are happening at Western Middle School behind the school. Dr. Jones?
Okay, I feel like this is the same every time I come. We're progressing along. And what I would say is look at the Capitol newsletter. There's great information in there. It has the history, it has the newest pictures. And just as a reminder, there are two fields, not just one. So you can see one, and then where all the vehicles are parked, that's where the next bit of work is going. Because it looks like it's almost done if you look at the picture. But that's why the target date of December, they'll be doing the rest of that work. But it's going along beautifully, and we are going to have our kids back on the field. So very exciting.
Do we know when they're gonna be back?
December, we've stayed with December as the target date. Now, if we have, hurricanes or, I don't know there are things that can impact it, but I try to be realistic, right? So, but we're planning, when we come back, we hope from winter break, our kids will be able to access it, assuming nothing throws us a curveball.
Mike?
So I think we have to plan some kind of,
Ribbon.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Is there any, Tony, was there any further conversations with Parks and Rec around lighting?
So we, early on in this project, the board made the decision that we were going to, run all the conduit so that we would be prepared for lighting. So it's there. We talked about this in Yeah, at the budget committee and discussed it. And it is, should it sit with Park and Rec because they oversee the field? Should it sit with the Board of Ed? And I think some of the questions we're getting now is, what does evening usage looks like? Does this benefit Greenwich Public Schools? Is it more you're doing it just for community use? Like, what are those questions? I will say that Pete, our athletic director at the high school, was very heavily involved in working, with us and with Park and Rec on the design of the field and how it could actually help Greenwich Public Schools. So, we've talked a lot about, is this a project that maybe we can have some private partnership and actually as a community, people can get behind it. I've gone through a project like this once before where we wanted to light a field and we ended up raising all of the money because it was so important to the parents, especially if they have little kids that are going to benefit from it. That could be something that could happen. We are hearing there's some people that would like to explore that, and maybe it's a certain percentage, where we look at a fundraising effort, but that's a great big discussion. But we do think there's benefit. And the great thing is the lights now point down, the light noise is not like it used to be in the old days. And you basically have all the beautiful trees we've planted around. So it's not like you have houses that are right there. So it is a beautiful site to be able to have lights.
Sophie, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just had a comment on that, which I happened to be talking to a parent from New Canaan, and they were saying that the fields in New Canaan are all lit and are used by the entire town all the time, so it's not just school children, it's like everyone in the community, and it facilitates like all sorts of uses. Early, people can use the fields to work out before work and after work, and there's all sorts of, it was just really interesting to hear how much it opens up the use for not just the school kids, although it certainly, facilitates having later practices and earlier practices and things like that. And it would be really nice for us to have that.
I would say having the opportunity to have lights on the field is also a safety issue, which I think is exceptionally important, because especially as we get later in the year and that those fields are rented out, used by the schools and rented out, it's really important for our students to be able to see and community members while they're on the field. So I will say I did discuss the cost and if it's Parks and Recs or whatever. I did position that with our select persons, first selectmen and beyond, and saying that's something that we really do need to discuss. And I have had a request, and I'm hoping that we can get a little more detail on. I know we were given a number, and I know our budget committee is going to be looking at it, like a little more detailed cost and understanding where that number came from, because I know, the BET is going to want to get that before we, get too far in. Hopefully they'll, I think that there's a possibility of supporting that. If, certainly we can make money further on the fields by adding that. But if we also have visuals to show people that there's not going to be as much light pollution and things like that with some of the new, lighting on fields, I think that would be very helpful too.
I will say, and I don't know how popular a position it is, but I say that if the decision comes to lighting on the western side, I think if any of that is because of underutilization of the high school fields, I think that's a significant concern. And I think the use of the high school fields and the full utilization of the high school fields has to become part of the community conversation.
Well, all I know is when those fields open, I'm going to be showing up much like our former chair, Joe, with my own ginormous scissors, and I'm going to do a little happy dance because, I'll be the first Hirsch that's been on that field in a long time. So anyway, just very happy to be able to have this, or another field open for our students. No more? Okay, so then I will be moving on to action items, our first of which is the superintendent goals. And just to get this on the table, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 superintendent goals as presented. Do I have a second?
I wanted to just ask a question about it. I know.
We can't until it's on the table, so I have to have a motion made to present them. Somebody has to second it, and then you can ask a question. Okay, Kathleen seconding it. So any discussion?
Yes.
Tony, I was just wondering if you could tell me what the third bullet point means, the equity word in there. Why can't we put equality? Why equity?
Well, what we mean by that, because this is really just talking about ample planning time. So I mean, if the board wants me to change the word, I don't care. It really has to do with making sure that if you're a first grade teacher in this building, first grade teacher over here, you get 60 minutes. If you're a first grade teacher or you're an art teacher, making sure they have their 60 minutes, which we didn't have until we went into this year's schedule. That's part of that whole big scheduling discussion, was trying to be equitable in what we're giving them, but certainly it's,
I would think it is equitable when you're making sure that there's ample planning time for all staff. So I don't know why we even need a word.
well, I think that's part of the discussion that we had early in the comments today. If the board changes things like world language, that will change. So we're watching that right now because we've done so much work within the schedule. We weren't like that. We didn't really know how bad it was until last year. And we started really going in and looking at the schedules, and you had teachers that barely had enough time to go to the restroom. And then you had another teacher that had double or triple the time. So that's why it's in here, because it's a big goal for us this year, making sure, and we're still working on it. I mean, it's going to be a weekly ongoing thing all year, but I'm happy to change the word if you guys want me to use a different word.
Are you like, instead of equity, you're looking for something like consistent? I mean, but
Consistent.
wordsmithing, I couldn't care less, but it means the same thing. It says making sure that everybody is. Yeah.
Do you want to?
Is that, I don't know if that works.
Yes,
Is that
that works for
better
me.
for you?
Do you want to withdraw it then, I guess, and then?
I don't know. I mean, before we do, let's see if there's any other questions, and I can withdraw the motion and we can make a new one with any other revisions that need to be made. Just so we don't keep making multiple withdrawals and changes. Anybody else have a specific comment, question? No. Okay, then I shall withdraw my motion. And I can remake said motion where am I? I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2025, 2026, excuse me, wrong one. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2024, 2025 superintendent goals as revised, to change in goal 1, the word equity to consistent.
Consistency.
Consistency? Ensure consistency, yes. Equity to consistency. Do I have a second? Okay, thanks, Wendy. So is there any other questions, comments now that we've made that revision? No? Okay, Wendy?
But he
you got
did
some?
actually make a good point about special ed goals in here.
So the way I see my role as a school superintendent, I don't need it in here. We have an action plan that is unbelievably robust, and it is my responsibility to make sure that the action plan, it gets done. And so I think that's why we've brought PCG back. They're going to look really carefully this year. And if we get to the end of the year, I mean, it is part of my goal. It is that review. So we'll see what they have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know last year we had a whole list of she had goals, and then there was 101 other little things that we were requiring her to look at. And that was one of the things that we had talked about specifically, which is why we're doing that review of the audit. So it's not on her goal, it's ours, and it was part of our strategic plan too. Any other questions, comments? No? All right, well, so then I guess we can vote. All those in favor, raise their hand. Okay, that passes 7-0. Fantastic. Which then allows us to move on. 6-0, sorry. I'm just used to saying 7. So, Elijah at the end of the table. So, all right, so then our next one is I'd like to make a motion to approve I'm going to start with option A. So I'm going to say I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 school calendar as presented in option A, with the spring break from April 6th to April 10th of 2026. Do I have a second? Okay, this gets it on the table, and then we can have a discussion if there's a discussion at option B is better. Okay, does anybody have comments? No?
Question.
Yeah.
To clarify, May 22nd, our early release day, is that a PD for staff or is that just early release?
Just an early release.
No, no comments, nothing. Okay. No, I just did, before I put option A, because it comes first in the alphabet, but I didn't know if there was any thoughts or discussions on option B. No?
Just gonna say, I think it was, you guys made some great changes. I know Sophie recommended the Christmas one. I think that's great. And I like the idea of the longer break earlier in April. It all makes sense. I think they're good changes.
All right. Perfect. So with that, I'm happy to call the question. There's no other, no other questions. All right, I'm happy to call the question then. All those who would like to approve the 2024-2025 with the option A of spring break, April 6th to the 10th of 2026, raise your hand. Okay. 6-0 this time when I can do my math. All right, perfect. So that brings us to our agenda plan discussion. I don't know if anybody has noticed anything that is missing from that we'd like to add. Obviously, we have opportunity, even if it's not here in this meeting, to suggest something that needs to be added, changed, or revised.
United Way.
All right, Mike, then Wendy.
We talked earlier this evening about circling back to flex time. I don't know if that's in here, a report from the high school, when that might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at it more happening like during the superintendent's report where Mr. Mayo could come and either speak to that. If we want it as a totally separate item, we'll have to just look at one of these business meetings where we can put it on the agenda. You know, and there's some, I mean, we'll be in the middle of budget, but there definitely are times in here where it's not as heavy. Like I would not recommend it at the retreat on the 17th because that was always a long one.
I would also think that we're only 3 weeks into school and change takes a little time to adjust to. And if there's concern that students aren't having access to certain things, I think we need to also give the high school time to make adjustments to that, right? So I would hope we would at least give it the semester for
Yeah,
adjusting.
I agree. I feel like January would be the soonest we should talk about it.
I'm one voice, but if I'd vote for it to be an agenda item only because we did kind of make a board goal looking at that kind of system. So I think it'd be important. We're hearing
Yeah,
a lot of comments about it.
I would like to, I mean, I agree with you and at least we have it as an agenda item so we have a discussion and we can, and then see where we're at. But I mean, I don't know if you agree that I think after the start of the year would be better just to give them some time for adjustment. Then we also, traffic will sort of adjust as well, everything. Kathleen?
Is the Hamilton Avenue HVAC going to come back with the budget, the operating budget, or what's the plan on that?
Oh, I don't think we really knew until tonight, like, you know, what the feedback was going to be. You know, other than getting the credits information, I really don't think we're going to get much more analysis because I think the numbers are very good and very reliable and solid, done by experts on both systems. So I agree with what I think you actually said, Mike, that we're just going to have to make a decision. And I hope you heard loud and clear from Ben, the staff, support the board in whatever you decide. And if you decide to go with geothermal, we just want to be very clear that we're not doing it because it's saving money. And that's what concerns staff because we're the ones that stand in front of all the bodies as we're putting the project forward. And we just don't want to say that we're going to get, you know, 1.4, 1.6 million in credits and then it doesn't happen and people get upset with us. We'll do everything possible to try to get those incentives. But right now it's just such a hard question because the consultants that do this haven't had this question. And they all tell us that in solar, they've dealt with it. Where they have existing solar, you're upgrading solar, do you get the incentives? This is a new question for them with geothermal. And again, it probably does go back to we put it in so many years ago that most people aren't in our life cycle like we are.
Which then brings the question forward, and I think we can reach out. I think I'm happy to do so to our state representatives to see also if they can see if there's possibility for refurbishment, because again, it meets the state and the town's goals of energy, supporting the environment and energy savings. What?
So the standards that we build to are the green building standards for the state. There's, you get a point when you're constructing new, there's a point system. I don't know that there is.
Yeah, no,
for
we're not discussing my point is just, we can reach out to state representatives to get that, because I know we have to go have a discussion with those who actually write our checks to pay for these things. And they definitely would like to have that detail, because if we know we're not getting anything back, that's a point to share with them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do really encourage the board, send me questions so that we can collate those for you, because I really think we need to have it like on the October 24th agenda, getting through the BET again, all of those committees, the RTM, all of the committees, and this was a hot topic, just takes time, and it's like the clock keeps ticking. And we're not opposed to going for an interim. We don't know that we'll need it, because we still have a little bit of design money to go ahead and move us forward, but we won't know that until we really understand the timing. So I would encourage putting it on the 24th, since we're talking about the agenda in October.
I mean, I think that would be helpful if we could get the information asked by the board by then, just because we are burning money every month with rental fees and things like that. So, any other things that we might be missing that we can certainly add on, Wendy?
The phones. Did we want to put that on the agenda? I know people in the community wanted to talk about it.
I was going to say, I think policy will meet with
Well,
it.
we will certainly have a better sense after the next few rounds of policy meetings. Sure. And same with AI.
So, yeah, well, once the policy committee has an opportunity to meet, we'll certainly.
You could have AI write the policy.
I'm gonna
Let's see what happens.
I'm gonna ask ChatGPT what to do about our
Good God.
HVAC.
Anyway, so is there anything else? And again, doesn't have to be brought up here. If there's stuff that we're missing, you can certainly reach out to have discussions to add. Nope. All right. Well, I'm thrilled to say that we had a nice long executive session and a nice robust discussion and short Board of Ed meeting. And we'll also note to the public to please take a we didn't discuss it, but there's a written report from the Alliance that's on our agenda so people, I really hope you have the opportunity to take a look at how much they do for our schools and our students and how involved they are. So please take a look at that report, and support our communities in education. Really, it makes a difference. So with that, does somebody have a motion? Anyone? Laura's smiling at me. She's got a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second? Sophie, all in favor? All right, 6-0. Thank you for all those out there still listening.
Thanks, all.